So as I mentioned, I'll note for the record that all members of council are present and accounted for, and as always, we do begin our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you're able, please stand and join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we do have a proclamation this evening, a statement by the Alpharetta Clergy Association, and if members of council would like to join me at the front, please do so. So Keith, we appreciate you coming this evening. For those of you that may not know, there was a pretty disturbing incident over the past few weeks, and we had some people from our community, our faith leaders, and the organization of our denominational faith leaders reach out to us and ask to present a statement from the organization. So I'll hand this over.
Sure. Well, thanks for being here, Mr. Mayor, Council. Glad we could come. Our desire, my name's Keith Welton from Radiant Church in Alpharetta. Our desire is to be a blessing to the community. So anytime we can do that, we're glad to be able to get out in the community and help. And the mayor's request was some particularly anti-Semitic literature that was handed out recently. He wanted us, the faith community, to make a statement on that, and we were glad to do, and really appreciative of your initiative to defend another community of faith. And so we've come up with a response we wanted to read tonight. Can we do that now? Please do. This is on behalf of a number of ministries in the community. It just says, in response to the neighborhoods in the city of Alpharetta recently being targeted with anti-Semitic material, we join together as religious leaders in this community to condemn any and all forms of anti-Semitism, whether in thought, speech, or action. We stand with the religious and civic leaders of this and nearby communities who have publicly spoken against the same. As people of faith who come from many different traditions, we give thanks for and celebrate our Jewish neighbors and friends. We invite all residents and visitors in the city of Alpharetta to offer prayerful support, friendship, kindness, respectful dialogue, and acts of solidarity and support of our Jewish neighbors. Let's work together to build communities of liberty, justice, and civility for all.
Thank you, sir. And so I appreciate you and all of our faith leaders. I just wanted to let you know, because I find it very disturbing. Our council, our residents find it disturbing. We can't control the world, but we understand that Alpharetta is a community that welcomes all. And what brings us together in this place at this time is we share the values. People of faith, regardless of what that faith is, of education and a safe community. And so we're very proud to have a group of leaders in our community like yourselves who are willing to take a statement against some of the people who may want to disrupt what we have here.
Can I say one more thing?
Please do.
I just want to say one of the things that resonated with us as we were making this statement was that you don't need uniformity of belief, but you need respect and honor for all people. And so we're grateful to have that as a community, and also grateful to have that support by the leadership of the community. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, sir. So the first item up on our agenda this evening is the consent agenda. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Then I'll list the items on the consent agenda as the City Council meeting minutes from the meeting of July 24th, 2023, the City Council meeting minutes from the meeting of August 7th, 2023, alcoholic beverage license applications, which are PH-23-AB-17 JK North Point Management LLC DBA Hyatt Place Atlanta, Alpharetta North Mall. And item 2 under alcoholic beverage license applications, which is PH-23-AB-18 Rena Avalon LLC DBA Rena Avalon. Last being the financial management report for the month ending June 30th, 2023. Is there anyone who would like to remove anything from the consent agenda? Bless you. Seeing none, do I have a motion from council?
So moved.
I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel. I have a second by Councilman Will. Any discussion? All those in favor, please vote yes, otherwise vote no. And it does pass unanimously. So the next item, or the next portion of our meeting, I should say, is a public hearing, and then we'll begin with CLUP-23-02/V-23-06/V-23-07, North Main Street Townhomes. Mr. Woodman, I believe you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The first item before you this evening is a request from Greenland Properties, LLC. They're requesting a comprehensive land use plan amendment and rezoning, as well as variances to allow for 16 for-sale townhomes on 2.28 acres. The proposed density is 7 dwelling units per acre. Comprehensive land use plan amendment is requested from commercial to high-density residential, and a rezoning from C2 general commercial to R8AD, which is a zoning district that allows both attached and detached use, residential use. Variances are also requested to reduce setbacks, reduce undisturbed buffers, and reduce lot widths. I do have the location map up on the overhead. The property is located at 0 State Highway as well as 572 North Main Street. This is near the northeast corner of North Main Street and Highway 9. I'm sorry, North Main Street and Vaughn Drive. This is an undeveloped wooded property today. Properties adjacent to this property are 321 Vaughn, which are the townhome development just on the north side of the property. City of Milton is located to the east of the property. The entrance to Winthrop Chase, which is the single-family detached development here, so that entrance is right to the south of the property. And then to the east, the west of the property is the Kalen Center and North Main Street Animal Hospital. As I mentioned, the applicant had 3 variance requests. There is a variance request to reduce the front setback in the R8A zoning district from 65 to 20 feet and to reduce the lot width from 30 feet minimum and the applicant has a combination of 20-foot wide townhomes and 25-foot wide townhomes. There is also a variance request to reduce the undisturbed buffers abutting non-residential properties. This property is located in the Highway 9 LCI, which we are currently doing a major update to that plan. We did not ever approve an overlay for that area of North Main Street. That LCI actually points to the city's downtown regulations as it relates to what the design of the buildings on the property should look like, as well as what the site layout should be. But again, we never did develop an overlay district. I suppose that we probably will do that at the conclusion of the Highway 9 Windward LCI. And I mentioned the Highway 9 LCI because that document points to our downtown. So the variance is to reduce the front setback as well as reduce the lot width is consistent with the vision of that LCI. This is the applicant's site plan. So there are 16 townhomes. The 20-foot wide townhomes are oriented to Highway 9, to North Main Street. You see the 8 units here, 4 and 4 with the entrance. And there are an additional 8 units at the rear of the property. These are the 25-foot wide townhomes at the rear. There are 2 significant tree save areas at the rear of the property here and here. And in between those tree save areas is the stormwater management area in this general location. All the townhomes do have the required 2 parking spaces within the garage as well as the code compliant driveway. There are additional 9 guest parking spaces in this general area here. And then there are open space around the tree save areas at the rear of these townhomes. The applicant, when we first looked at this, we did encourage the applicant to reach out to the townhome community to the north to gain access through that development. They have a street that terminates in this general location. There were no requirements on that development to provide interparcel access to this property. The applicant did go ahead and reach out to that HOA for this townhome community, and they were not interested in providing access through their development to this property. So that is the access that you see is from Main Street. So this is the applicant's proposed architecture. This may look a little familiar to you. This is the same architecture that was proposed on a property that's just east of the Gubin Jewelry Store on Old Milton Parkway. The request never, it was postponed and never came back to council. The applicant withdrew the application. The home builder was Fisher Homes. And the applicant is working with Fisher Homes on this particular site. So they are proposing the same architecture that had been reviewed by our downtown consultant to meet one of the styles, because even though this is not in the downtown, that Highway 9 LCI points to our downtown as it relates to design. So this is the architecture that is being proposed for the townhomes. This is the Tudor eclectic style. Primarily, you're seeing brick and stone with some board and batten and siding accents. The applicant has indicated that the townhome units will be about 2,500 square feet, so they're just a little under 2,500 square feet. So this is the front elevation, the rear elevation, which the rear elevations will not be facing Main Street, and then your side elevations. So as it relates to the buffer variance adjacent to the commercial properties, so outside of the downtown, we do require that the for sale residential property provide the 50-foot undisturbed buffer on their property. And so the applicant is asking for a variance to reduce that 50-foot undisturbed buffer on their property. And this is the property line, their western property line adjacent to the Kalin Center and the North Main Street Animal Hospital. So the owner of the Kalin Center did reach out to the applicant and said they had some concerns with that buffer variance. And the applicant has agreed to place a fence and some landscaping along the common property line. This exhibit is actually labeled Exhibit B, and I'll reference that in one of the zoning conditions. The Kalin Center, as well as the 321 Vaughn Townhome Development, both received buffer variances to eliminate, well, I'm sorry, for the Kalin Center, it was to eliminate the 50-foot undisturbed buffer on their property. And for the townhome development, it was to reduce the buffer. So the townhome development does have a 25-foot reduced buffer on their property that's platted on their property. The Kalin Center was approved for a variance to completely eliminate the 50-foot buffer on their property. that effectively pushed the buffer from the Kalen Center onto this property. There were no zoning conditions associated with the Kalen Center. However, with the 321 Vaughn Drive Townhome project, there was a condition that the HOA covenants have an acknowledgement that the residents of the townhome community would not oppose any buffer variances, underserved buffer variances on surrounding properties in the future. And you'll see a similar condition recommended on this development. Of course, reviewing this application, we did believe that the applicant's proposal is consistent with the goals and policies of the comp plan, as well as that vision for the Highway 9 LCI. Of course, the property is zoned C2 commercial, so it's our heaviest commercial zoning district, and just given the state of retail, we don't believe that there's additional land needed for commercial development. We do think that there are some exceptional conditions on the property, especially with that Highway 9 LCI plan that does encourage buildings to be brought up to the street with their pedestrian entrance visible from the street, as well as the previous buffer variances that have been approved on adjacent properties. The applicant did provide a citizen participation report, did indicate that 2 adjacent property owners reached out, concerns over trees, privacy, and the undisturbed buffer variance. As I mentioned, they did meet with the Kalen Center on site and came to an agreement for fencing and landscape improvements along the common property line. This item was shown to the public at the April 12th Community Zoning Information Meeting, and there were no public comments at that meeting. And then this item was considered by Planning Commission on July 13th. There were no public comments at Planning Commission, and Planning Commission did recommend unanimous approval of the item subject to 21 conditions, and I will go through those conditions. Condition 1 is the site plan specific condition with a rezoning to R8A/D and tying it to the site plan prepared by DMG Land Planning Consultants dated 6/1/23. Condition 2, the comprehensive land use plan designation of the property shall be high density residential. Condition 3 is the architecture and materials condition, tying it to Exhibit A, which are the elevations or renderings that I showed you. Condition 4, density shall not exceed 7.02 dwelling units per acre. Condition 5 is the North Main Street streetscape improvements. Condition 6 requires decorative pedestrian lighting throughout the development and that internal streets and alleys will be private and maintained by the HOA. Condition 7, minimum 5-foot sidewalks provided along the new private driveway. Condition 8 requires a 20-foot building setback and landscape strip along North Main Street. Condition 9 ties the townhome minimum lot widths to the applicant's site plan. 10, minimum 10-foot landscape strips shall be provided along the new private driveway. There is an exception there in case Fulton County does require unencumbered easements for water lines. Condition 11 addresses the evergreen buffers, so a minimum 10-foot planted evergreen buffer shall be provided along the west and east property lines. Existing trees shall be saved in the buffer areas where not in conflict with site balancing and utility installation. Condition 12 is HOA declarations and covenants shall include an acknowledgement that the owners of surrounding commercial tracts abutting the subject property may seek a variance to reduce the width of the undisturbed buffer requirement as a result of the rezoning of the subject property from C2 to R8AD. Property owners subject to the HOA declarations and covenants shall not object to any such reasonable variance request. Condition 13, creeping vines shall be planted to cover retaining and low walls as approved by staff. 14 is the tree save condition, tying it to a plan prepared by TJ Shell LLC dated 3/29/23. 15, fences and walls visible from the public right-of-way shall be decorative. Unfinished wood fences and decks shall not be visible from the street. 16, HVAC and similar equipment shall not be visible from the public right-of-way. 17 deals with the stormwater management area and just requiring heavily planted evergreen buffer. 18 continues with the stormwater management area and asks for reasonable efforts to make a direct tie into an off-site pipe. Of course, we cannot force that condition, and there is that condition goes on to indicate that if daylighting of the pond outfall pipe is required, that's going to be set back 30 feet from the property lines. 19, garbage pickup shall be from within the development. 20 restricts the number of rentals to no more than 10%. And 21 references this Exhibit B, which is the agreement that the applicant came to with the Kalin Center. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer those.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Woodman? Councilman Dorito?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Whitten. Just a few questions. First, on ingress and egress, that's going to be the only in and out of this development of approved. Can you speak to the GDOT project? And I guess you're going to have a 20-foot landscape buffer there. Is that in addition to any sidewalks or anything that GDOT is installing as part of their project?
Yeah, that's a great question. We did ask the applicant to consider GDOT's project on their site plan, so they have made accommodations for the GDOT project, including the 10-foot wide sidewalks here. So the 20-foot setback will be from the future property line.
Is there any ability to put a decel lane going into the development?
We did have our traffic consultant look at this. I mean, I'm sure that there would be an ability to potentially do that. Our traffic consultant did review this request and did not think that a decel lane into the development
I'm
was
just thinking,
necessary.
I drove
But
over
yeah.
there and I drove by a few times just to see what the traffic's like in that area, because you have the intersection that comes up past the animal hospital, I think it is. It's just a lot of fast traffic coming down there. Just from a safety reason, it'd be good if we had some sort of, requirement or condition to have a safe ingress and egress from that development, since it's a residential property.
I don't know if the applicant has looked at potentially doing a decel lane there. I know that it wasn't recommended, so it wasn't something that we pushed.
Would that be something that GDOT would have to approve? Or?
GDOT would be involved in that approval, okay. Yes.
Just your comment. You had a comment regarding the, commercial development is really not needed. I don't know if you mean in that area. Could you speak to that a little bit? Because when I went over there was a lot of residential construction kind of around this site. And it seems to be a site that is conducive to residential development. But there is laddered commercial all over the place there. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is, what precedent, are we setting any sort of precedent that that whole entire area could eventually transition to residential development?
So I think that's a great question. I think it was not, let me take a step back for a second. Sorry, I got lost in my thoughts there for a second. The comment that I made about that we don't need additional commercial land for commercial use really has to do with, we have so much commercial in the city, and we see that commercial is actually pulling back a bit. And the type of commercial development or retail and restaurant uses that we see are doing well in more mixed-use environments. So that's the point that I was making about we didn't need additional land for the commercial development. I do think that we will see with the LCI plan, so even our downtown plan, as well as this Highway 9 LCI, does encourage a more mixed-use environment where we don't have just all commercial development along this corridor. There could be a mix of uses, whether that's commercial, office, or even residential. So I do see that we will see a change along this particular area. I don't see it going all to residential development.
So, and one follow-up question, on the comprehensive land use plan or Horizon 2030, which was, I think, the 10-year plan was submitted about 2 years ago, I think, almost, right toward the tail end of the major part of the pandemic, and had a lot of public input and meetings. And I'm always a little bit leery when we're changing zoning, that we've gone through the investment of doing this big plan, hundreds and thousands of dollars, and then we kind of keep changing the zoning. And my question to you is, do you feel that the current comprehensive land use plan, and it's dated, let's be honest, 2 years, things change, right? That particular area of the city, you know, we should probably expect more residential applications coming in for parcels of land there?
I think that we will, especially with going through the Highway 9 LCI, Windward LCI that we're working on currently. I think that you will see a change to more mix of uses in that, instead of it being all commercial development through there. So I suppose we'll wait for the recommendations out of that plan, but I think our next steps will likely be updating future land use, potentially even preparing overlay districts for this area.
Because I do agree with your comment about where commercial development and retail it really is going in our city and maybe around the country. It's more compacted in areas of communities versus splattered all over the place. So I get that. Just one other question. Condition number 12. Could you explain that to me? And why you think that's an important, I know this came up in the Planning Commission hearing by one of the commissioners, is kind of fine-tuning this language, but I'm just trying to understand, like, what's the benefit of that condition?
Yeah, so what we're trying to, so the benefit of it is what I had mentioned about with the Kalen Center. So the Kalen Center is this commercial development, it's an office that sits right here. A couple years ago, we approved a conditional use to allow a church to use that building on Sundays. So with that, when they developed, or before they developed this property, they came into us with a site plan, and they did not provide the 50-foot buffer adjacent to the existing townhome community to their north. And they asked for a variance for that, and they were approved for a variance to completely eliminate the buffer. When you eliminate the buffer on one property, you're effectively moving the buffer requirement to the next property over. So the idea was that we put a condition such as condition number 12. This is very similar, if not the same language that was placed on 321 Vaughn townhomes. And the idea is that if you approve a buffer variance for them, you put a condition on the property so that the next guy comes in for the buffer, that everyone is on notice that we can't just automatically object to this request. If it's a reasonable request, then it's something that we as a group, we're not going to come out against.
Right. Thank you, Mr.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
I just thought the public should hear that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Any questions for Mr. Woodman, I should say? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Woodman.
Mm-hmm.
Would the applicant like to come forward at this time?
Mr. Mayor, council members, my name's Rob Hosack. I'm with Greenland Development Ventures. Did want to thank Mr. Woodman for the collaborative approach. I think we came out with a much better site plan after conversations with he and the city arborist, Mr. Shostak. Wanted to mention that we're particularly proud, don't have any opposition. We think we struck a very good agreement with the Kalen Center. Everybody turned out happy, and I just wanted to provide a couple of additional reasons that we believe are basis for the mayor and council to approve the rezoning. We do feel like this provides a slightly better transition, moving east to west for the adjacent properties. And we also think that it basically better comports with the city's vision, particularly for what's going on along Main Street and what we envision for being the update to the LCI plan. So appreciate the assistance from Mr. Woodman and the rest of the city staff, and would request that you follow the recommendation of the Planning Commission and approve the application, sir. And of course, I'm happy to answer any questions, Mr. Mayor.
Have any questions for the applicant? Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, if anyone would like to come forward at this time and speak on this matter, now is your chance to do so. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Tonight I'd offer a motion to approve CLUP-23-02/Z-23-06/V-23-07 North Main Street Townhomes as presented tonight by Mr. Woodman. Second.
Have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel and a second by Councilman Dorito. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and call for everyone to vote on the motion to approve CLUP-23-02/Z-23-06/V-23-07 North Main Street Townhomes as outlined in the motion by Mayor Pro Tem. Congratulations, it does pass unanimously. Oh, no, excuse me. There was one declining vote. Congratulations anyway. Next item up will be PH-23-16, City of Alpharetta Capital Improvement Element. Ms. Eswine, if you'll go ahead and read the resolution, then I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Woodman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A resolution by the mayor and the council of the city of Alpharetta, Georgia for the transmittal of the fiscal year 2022 capital improvement element of the comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Ms. Eswine. Mr. Woodman, you have the floor once again.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this is our annual request to you, requesting authorization to transmit the fiscal year 2022 capital improvement element to the Atlanta Regional Commission and Georgia Department of Community Affairs. Just as a reminder, Georgia Planning Act requires that local governments utilizing the impact fee system to include a capital improvement element in the comprehensive plan and to provide annual updates of that capital improvement element. This is just a means of tracking progress and achieving our community goals. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Woodman? Thanks, sir. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, if anyone would like to come forward, now is your chance to do so. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'd offer a motion this evening to approve PH-23-16, City of Alpharetta Capital Improvement Element as presented by Mr. Woodman.
Was that a second by Councilman Mitchell?
Second, yes, thank you.
So we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem and a second by Councilman Mitchell to approve PH-23-16, City of Alpharetta Capital Improvement Element. Any discussion? All those in favor, please vote yes, otherwise vote accordingly. And that one does pass unanimously. Next item up will be the text amendments for the ethics ordinance. This is the first reading, so we'll have Ms. Eswine present this.
An ordinance to amend Article 5 of Chapter 2, Code of Ethics and Conduct of the Code of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to amend requirements for the filing of ethics complaints, to provide for the composition of the Ethics Board, to provide for operating procedures for the Ethics Board, to establish procedures for processing ethics complaints, to provide for disciplinary action, to provide penalties for the wrongful use of an ethics complaint, to provide for attorney's fees, to repeal conflicting provisions, to provide for an effective date, and for other purposes. Mayor and Council, this is the draft of the ethics ordinance that has been before you during these workshops that we've had on it. However, I did make the changes as directed at the most recent workshop. To highlight those, I would point you to the main one, which is the panel composition. And I did change it from an ethics panel to a board, so you'll notice that difference right away. You didn't hear me say panel. It was framed as a panel before when we were pulling from a pool of potential members to comprise a board. However, now, as it is drafted, the board will vote as a whole by majority vote to appoint members to a board to serve a term of 4 years, with 3 of the 5-member board being attorneys and 2 of the 5-member board members being residents of the city of Alpharetta. Pursuant to y'all's direction, that would require almost unanimous vote by the city council. No member can be appointed to the ethics board who receives more than 1 dissenting vote. And I framed it that way rather than saying 6 members in favor in the event that we had a vacancy on the seat. The intent of the council seemed to be not to want to have a unanimous vote, and if for any reason there was a vacancy on the council, then a 6-member vote would be unanimous. And so I made it more than 1 dissenting vote. So it seems kind of opposite, but there was a reason to that. The other changes that I made were consistent with Councilmember Hype's suggestions. So this draft does not reflect the time when there is a pending election. That has been taken out, and otherwise the draft seeks to kind of fine-tune the processing of complaints so we don't find ourselves where we have to draw names out of a hat really quickly with the hands of the board members tied as to when they have to have ethics hearings. However, it does still provide for deadlines within the scope of the ordinance so that we can make sure to move things along at a fair but still reasonable pace. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Councilman Hypes?
Ms. Eswine, let me start with great job by taking 7 different opinions and putting them into one collective document. I think you did a great job.
Thank you.
I would ask you to look at 2-197A, and if you feel there's no inconsistency there, then fine, but it says they'll serve for a term of 4 years, period. All members shall serve until their successor is appointed. I could easily see something that's irreconcilable there, but I would defer to your...
Absolutely. The intent there is that the term would be for 4 years. However, if the council, for whatever reason, is delayed in making an appointment, that the person would continue to serve until their replacement is named. And I can be sure to make that clarification in the second reading.
Just wanted to bring it up. Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Any other? Councilman Binder and then Councilman Dorito.
Thank you, Mayor Gilman. Question, so on the 6, that does make sense. Does that kind of say, so if it's a vacancy or if there's an absence? So if there's an absence, what would happen?
If there's an absence, then it wouldn't be a vote in opposition. So say you had 5 members at the meeting, it could theoretically pass with 4 in favor because you wouldn't have a negative vote. If you want me to make it more clear that it requires all but 1 member of the then sitting city council members, I could do that.
I'll have to look in that section. I just want to avoid any kind of gray area once we have to refer to that document during the time, but it makes sense that maybe it's a full council vote, taking out any vacancies, but just want to make sure the gray area is done there. Now, what if in that 5-person board, there's a conflict of interest? Does it go down to a 4-person, or are there alternates?
So the reason I said a negative, let me...
Going to the ethics board
the ethics
itself.
board, there are alternates that
Okay.
are appointed. The same qualifications have to be met. And so the council would name 1 member as an one individual as an alternate citizen and 1 alternate attorney who would then fill in according to which board member needed replacing.
Perfect.
In the event of a conflict of disqualification. And if I can back up, as to the direction as to whether we have 6 members voting in favor or, if a council member is absent, I think the intent was you didn't want 1 person on the council, not this council, of course, to be able to basically hold on to a vote to keep it from being unanimous consent. I would say that if you wanted it to be that the entire council had to be present to make that vote, then an individual could also just not come to a meeting when that was on the agenda. So we can change that and address it if you think that it needs to be. I just wanted to throw that out there.
I'll look at it again. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter to me either way. I just didn't want it to be a gray area that becomes an arguing point if something were to arise. So,
Absolutely, and that's a fair point. I'll make sure to just check
Make
that
sure
over
it's
again
clean.
before the second reading next
Yeah.
week to make sure that anything that needs tightening up, if there is anything, is addressed.
And I'll echo Councilmember Hypes' point that good job taking 7 very various opinions.
Thank you. Y'all all worked very hard on it with me, so thank you. And thank you for your patience. I know this has been a long time coming.
Councilman Dorito?
Thank you, Mayor. I echo my colleagues' compliments, Ms. Eswine, for the work you put into this, along with our city administrator, Chris Lagerblum. There's been a lot of discussion leading up to tonight. The only question I have is, and it may be somewhere else in the actual ethics ordinance, that it's not in the changes here, is there somewhere we define what a city official is?
Yes, there is, and that's in the rest of the code. So I did
So
not.
it's in there.
It is
Okay.
in there. I didn't change anything about what the actual code of ethics was, any of the definitions, any of those things.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Eswine? I will concur. Thank you very much. Well done in drafting a lot of different input, not only from council, but from the public as well, incorporating it all. That being said, Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, if anyone would like to come forward and speak on the ethics ordinance, now is your chance to do so. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the first reading of the ordinance to amend Article 5 of Chapter 2 of the Code of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, and the Code of Ethics and Conduct.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilman Will, a second by Councilman Dorito, and that was to approve the motion for the first reading of the text amendments and the ethics ordinance. Any discussion? All those in favor, please vote yes, otherwise vote no. And it does pass unanimously. So we'll move on to the next item, which is the public hearing on the fiscal year 2024 millage rate levy. Director Harris, you once again have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the first of 3 public hearings on establishing the millage rate for the 2024 budget. It's primarily just to ensure that we follow state statutes and have an opportunity now to directly hear from the public. And later this evening, we will have the budget adoption as well as the millage rate adoption as an ordinance.
Any questions for Director Harris? Thank you, sir. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, once again, this is your opportunity to come forward and speak on the millage rate levy. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council? No motion. Oh, I'm sorry. There will be no motion on this. That's correct. So we'll move on to the new business portion of tonight's meeting, and that's the fiscal year 2024 millage rate ordinance. Director Harris.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I will let Molly read the ordinance because it's actually establishing for the first of 2 readings the ordinance on the millage rates.
An ordinance of the mayor and the council of the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, to fix the ad valorem tax rate of the city of Alpharetta, Georgia for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2023, and ending June 30th, 2024, and for other purposes.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions from council? Councilman Binder.
Mr. Harris, can you go over the calendar of when the readings will be? Is it next week?
Yes, it'll be the second public hearing will be at the 11:30 meeting on the 28th, and then we will have the third at the public hearing that evening at 6:30, sorry. And then we will have the second reading of the millage rate ordinance and the second reading of the budget ordinance.
Any other questions for Director Harris? Thank you, sir. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, once again, you have an opportunity to come forward and speak on this item if you'd like. And seeing no one come forward, we'll close public comment. Now do I have a motion for the first reading of the fiscal year millage rate ordinance?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion this evening to approve the first reading of fiscal year 2024 millage rate ordinance.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel, a second by Councilman Hypes, and that was to approve the fiscal year 2024 millage rate ordinance. Any discussion? Councilman Binder.
Yes, when we originally spoke about this and realized that this was happening, this is an increase in our tax digest. I think it's incumbent on us to make the case of how we can utilize those funds, and I agree with what was said in the workshop that my preference would be to earmark those funds to tell the public what we're going to do with it. We're not doing that today. It is my hope that within this week that we can maybe get some thoughts down on paper of where this is going to go besides unallocated. I think it's our responsibility to have the hard conversations and make the discussions of where it should go. And hopefully that we'll be able to move in that direction in the next week.
Any other discussion? I'll just note, I share some of the frustration. However, I don't agree that we should withhold this at this time. We're under time constraints. Part of the challenge is the finance department doesn't work on the same cycle as the tax assessor's office. And so we go through our fiscal year budget and wrap it up. We have to have that done by June 30th. And we don't actually get a tax digest until the fall. And so occasionally this issue does occur. And right now I don't see any reason to withhold making this done. So because the tax bills are going out when, Director Harris?
By October 1st.
Right. And here we are towards the end of August at this point. So I think it is important that we make our case, and I have no doubt that we'll be doing that. I just feel because of the time constraints and making sure that the bills do go out on time and they are accurate, that first we need to resolve this, get this taken care of, and then we'll have enough time to deliberate and make sure that the public is well aware that these monies will be spent responsibly. So that being said, all those in favor of the motion that was to approve the fiscal year millage rate, 2024 millage rate ordinance, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And I accidentally pressed the wrong button. We can just revote. My apologies, everyone. I was trying to hit the shut up button and I hit the no button.
I'll do it again.
Yeah, I know. I won't push the shut up button this time. And it does pass 6-1. So the next item will be the fiscal year 2024 budget amendment ordinance. First reading, Ms. Eswine.
An ordinance by the mayor and the council of the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, to adopt a fiscal 2024 budget amendment for certain funds of the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, appropriating the amount shown in each budget as expenditures, adopting the item of revenue anticipation, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures to exceed actual funding available.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Ms. Eswine? Tom, do you have anything to add?
Well, I just want to mention that, again, this item before you is actually amending the budget for the $1,795,000, recognizing it in the general fund, transferring it to the capital project fund, as we mentioned at the workshop, and putting it in the unallocated account at that time.
Thanks, sir. If there's no questions for Mr. Harris, Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
But if you would like to come forward and speak on the budget amendment ordinance, now is your chance. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, make a motion tonight to approve the fiscal year 2024 budget amendments as presented this evening by the city attorney.
Second.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel. I believe the second was Councilman Heights. Any discussion? Councilman Binder?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this needs to be very clearly put that this is a tax, we're accepting a tax increase to our digest. And I think we can, as I said earlier, I think we can make a very good case for it. I think it's very fair for the public to understand maybe why they wouldn't receive it back in a millage decrease or a homestead exemption. And I feel very strongly that it's fair for us to say what we would do with it. The point was made during the workshop that it's very easy to put in unallocated, and then we can decide what we want to do at a future date of how we want, to allocate, to where we would like to put it. I get concerns when we're looking at things, well, perhaps we can do a bond, and then we talk about behind in our closed meetings discussing how are we going to make up for North Point Parkway. We don't have the funds to do it, and we're looking at doing a decrease in scope for that. And then on the other hand, we have other meetings talking about, well, why don't we do something nice to have, like a performing arts center for a bond. We talk about, well, operations. We need a generator. Yeah, we need a generator. We just found that out this summer. But for the city hall, because the air conditioning goes out, we're not taking care of our foundation fundamental needs as a city. But then, on the other hand, during our retreat on February or January, I hear that our fire stations are in need of cleaning facilities to make sure they clean the carcinogens and keep the rest of the fire station clean and other things to make sure it's updated. I think that's very important. It's, to me personally, very important on those types of items, because I have a brother that had cancer, a type of cancer that wasn't for his age range, but it was prevalent amongst fire stations. So I think we can solve in this week. We had July to figure it out. We talked about the needs. So we're not in a rush, but I just don't feel comfortable kicking the can, and I think we should lead. We should make tough decisions, and we should say what kind of results we want to have done with this money. So we have a week. I trust this group that we can get it done, but I just can't be supportive of it, and at this point. But I think we can definitely make the case to get there. Thank you.
Councilman DeRito.
I completely respect Councilman Binder's comments. I understand where he's coming from, but I think it's important to say that when we have passed our budget for the next fiscal year. The reason why we're going through these public hearings again is required by state law, because when the digest came in after we passed our budget, we had $1.8 million of new revenues that we didn't anticipate in the budget that we have to do something with, and we advertised the budget for that reason. It's been a very short period of time since Fulton County provided us the final digest. In fact, we went through, I think, 1 or 2 weeks of confusion whether or not it was even going to be 1.8. We initially heard that, and then we heard, hold off. I think from finance told us this, we're not sure what that number is going to be. So we couldn't even put it on the agenda for discussion. But I'll say this, we're talking about $1.8 million in a pretty significant budget. It's not a significant amount of money in the scheme of things. I think it equates to, if we were to give a reduction to the tax, each individual homeowner, it's like $30 to $40. I think, Tom, you might know better than I would what it would equate to on average as far as a tax reduction to the taxpayer on an annualized basis. And Councilman Binder is correct in saying that we do have priorities. We do have things that need to be addressed. We went through a very detailed retreat this past year, early part of the year, where we went through all these priorities. And we talked about funding resources and federal grants and state grants and trying to match that up with managing the Alpharetta taxpayers' dollars very wisely. And I think we've done that. And so what I don't want this to turn into is that, we got this newfound money that we're going to put into this little slush fund, and then the council at some point is going to decide to use it on pet projects and stuff. That will not happen under my watch, I'll tell you that. I don't think it'll happen under anyone's watch on this council dais. We have worked really closely together with our department directors in establishing the budget that we did. If we want to give it back to the taxpayer, I'm all in favor of that. But when you look, and I said this earlier tonight in the workshop, Tom, that when you look at the economic environment around us, there's a lot of unknowns as far as increased costs for macadam since fuel prices are going back up. There's a lot of increased costs on construction costs. We have a lot of projects going on that the city has already committed to that we have to fund. And those costs are going to rise. Every aspect of government operations is going up. Salaries, we need to make sure we keep our professionals at a competitive level of compensation. I think this council has done that, and we reflected that in the budget we just passed. And so I think all we're saying is we're putting this money aside till the council has time to really look at it and decide how do we want to invest that money? Or do we want to give it back to the taxpayer? That's an option too, as Councilman Binder alluded to early on in his comments. And so I'm supporting this because I think, no one's making decisions on how we're going to spend that $1.8 million if we spend it at all. And that's all I'm saying. So I think the city taxpayers should be proud of the fiscal management that, Tom, your department has demonstrated for years now, and that this council has demonstrated. And I don't want to lose sight of that because that's the important thing. At the end of the day, every penny that we have put into the budget is going into a well-deserved investment for things that the city requires to maintain our level of services that this city requires.
Any other discussion? I'll just say that, once again, I appreciate Councilman Binder's position. I understand where he's coming from, and in a perfect world, we would have had all this resolved June 30th of this year. However, I do think, going back to the long list of items that Councilman Binder cited, that's far more than $1.8 million worth of projects that we would like to get done, not including the inflation of salaries and perhaps benefits and who else knows. So I don't think it's prudent for us to try to hurry up and figure that out because there's so many different options and there's 7 of us. I'd like us to be able to at least give some time to our staff and our council members to make sure we get it right. While $1.8 million is still a small portion of the $150 million budget that we passed originally, it's still $1.8 million. And whether it goes to fire station repairs or whether it goes to resurfacing or stormwater, those are deliberative things that I think we need to get it right, and we will. And we won't take our slow time to do it. But I think this is a ticking clock. We need to get it taken care of, and I'll support it. So that being said, all those in favor of the motion to approve, as outlined by Mayor Pro Tem, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And it passes 6-1. Next item up will be the invitation to bid 23-011 sidewalk repair and replacement. Director Sisevich.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. Sorry about that. For you tonight is the bid for recommending award to Soul Construction to repair over 2,000 linear feet of sidewalk on Windward Parkway and replace 92 broken or non-compliant handicap ramps. We do have a rating system. This is Tier 1, which is our more walkable areas throughout the city, and we're repairing everything that's in the poor and very poor categories. We did have one vendor that pulled out due to an error in their bid. They put the wrong unit price down. So we are recommending Soul to move forward at $496,770. This is the same contractor who's done multiple sidewalk projects for us throughout the city.
Thanks, sir. Any questions for Director Sisevich? Councilman Will.
Hey, Pete, just out of curiosity, the last time we did a project like this, how did the pricing then compare to the pricing now? What's been the price increase?
We didn't really look.
Percentage kind of basis, do you think?
It's about a 40% cost.
40%? In what time frame?
About 2 years.
Prices are up 40% in 2 years? Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay, thank you.
That includes the material and the labor side.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Any other questions for the Director? Thank you, sir. public comment cards on this item?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, if you'd like to come speak on the sidewalk bids, now is your opportunity. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mayor, I move to approve the award of ITB 23-011 to Soul Construction LLC for sidewalk repair and replacement in the amount not to exceed $496,770 and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
I have a motion by Councilman Dorito and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel. Any discussion? Councilman Hypes.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, somebody who's been in and around Alpharetta since '89, I just want to express how exciting it is that we have, as a city, 228 miles worth of sidewalk. It is transformative from the city that we used to be, the city that we are, to the city that we're becoming. And I know we adopted the measure sometime back to build a sidewalk on one side or the other of every street and road that's not in a subdivision. And of course, the more we expand and the more we build, the more we have to maintain. But some things are expenses, some things are an investment, and I think having sidewalks and having our residents being able to walk around the city and be pedestrian friendly is an investment, not an expense. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Or questions, I should say, for Drew? All right, no other comments, then we'll just go ahead with the vote. All those in favor of the motion, which was to approve the bid 23-011 sidewalk repair and replacement, in favor, vote yes, otherwise vote no. And it does pass unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor Council.
Thank you, Pete. We appreciate you keeping everybody safe on those sidewalks. Next item up is the purchase approval, Microsoft Enterprise Agreement for Software Services with Dell Marketing, LLP. Director Montgomery, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight's item is the approval of the Microsoft Enterprise Agreement through Dell Marketing. This is a 3-year, 1-year with 2 renewal period agreement that we have to do every 3 years. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Montgomery? Councilman Will.
Hey, Adam, I want to continue a little bit with what we were talking about this afternoon, but
Sure.
Specifically, based on the numbers that I'm looking at here, there are about 139 of these licenses that we're not currently using, right? And based on the numbers, it seems like that's about $27,000 a year in unused licenses. And I know this is a 3-year agreement that covers our potential to move people in and out and grow, but my question is really, is there any reason why we have to pay for the 139 that are not being used? Can't we add and subtract them under this contract so that, I mean, just carrying $30,000 a year makes no sense to me when people are just moving in and out of licenses and we're not using them.
Understood. So part of the calculation you're making there is for the 92 board members that we haven't deployed yet. We will be soon. So I would assume those to be used once those are deployed. The other thing is we just wouldn't be able to buy off of the state contract or off of the enterprise agreement. And so I'd have to check with Microsoft to see, can we have both enterprise agreement licenses and non-enterprise agreement licenses?
So
But we would be at the mercy of Microsoft's monthly charge, whatever that rate is.
So we have 92 of those. We have another 45 that are about quadruple the price of those 92.
Yep.
It seems to me like we ought to be able to have a contract that allows us to add and subtract we have 450 employees, we have 750 licenses, right? So we ought to be able to have some expansion and contraction within the contract.
Understood. The agreement means that when we add a license in the agreement, they spread that cost over the cost of 3 years. And so that's why we're getting a monthly cheaper charge than if you were to buy it on a monthly rate outside the contract. So the expectation is that you've bought 600 or however many of those licenses are, and you're going to pay for those over the course of 3 years. So they give you a discounted rate based upon that. So if we go outside the contract and just buy straight from Microsoft for, say, whatever the listed price is, next month they could change that price.
I'm not asking you to go outside the contract. I'm asking you if we can talk to them about having an addition and subtraction availability within our contract so that we're not paying for hundreds of licenses
Right.
we're not using.
So we can add. Subtraction is difficult because they're expecting you to pay out the amount, right? Because it's a contracted license for that year.
So if we can add, then why can't we start with the ones we need and add the under 130, 140 as we need them, as opposed to paying that carrying cost from day one?
That would be difficult to do. We'd have to see how that would be done. That's not something we've ever done before, and I haven't heard of any place doing it that way. Typically what you do, again, the numbers fluctuate, so we would have to see. About 2 years ago, we did a study, looked at all of the licenses to see who was assigned to what license, and at that time, almost all the licenses were being used, so we're in a period where the numbers are slightly down, but that doesn't mean that 2 months from now we'll have a hiring spree, or there may be an event, or where they're suddenly recruiting a lot more volunteers, and we now need those licenses available. And so we aren't increasing any numbers. The last 2 agreements have the exact same numbers we have today.
So in your opinion, how many have we been carrying over the last couple of years that have not been actively used?
It's hard to say because it depends on the time of year. I think what we can do is, I've never seen we've never ever removed licenses from the Microsoft agreement.
I don't
And
doubt
so,
that.
and so because we use them, right? So 6 years ago when we planned out the licensing we have today, yes, we carried a number of licenses over in the anticipation that over time we will be adding more and more people, which we have. A lot more volunteers. There are a lot more seasonal people that come in and use. So the numbers have been able to stay steady in terms of the fluctuations year over year. But we have and the other thing we run into is as we go to removing people, we have to keep those licenses on them for a certain amount of time so that we can get to those mailboxes and we can access their information.
It just feels like, very much like we have 450 people and 750 licenses, and we've just decided to carry a whole bunch of extra licenses in case we need them. And nobody ever gives any consideration to the fact that we're spending $30,000 a year to do that.
So I think it's important to understand.
I see Director Harris coming up.
It's important to understand, too, that the license is not just a mailbox. So part of what you're buying for when we look at the G5 and the G3 level licensing is not just a mailbox or an exchange mailbox. Anytime a user logs into one of our computers, that requires a Microsoft Windows licensing. If they access a system that's not running on a server, that requires a Microsoft Server license cal. That is all included in those G3, G5 licenses. That's why it's the 3 times the price of a G1, which is just Office, right? It's just a mailbox and some SharePoint access.
Director Harris, do you have a comment?
Yes. Good evening. I'm just trying to get the level playing field, I think, as far as the 140. I think what I heard, just to make sure that it's not 140 off, because 92 of them are boards and commissions that are going to be added today, or very soon. So they need to be in that number. So at best, you're off maybe 40, maybe carrying 40, maybe based on whatever number that was
Those 45 are
articulated.
390
Just
bucks.
90. So 90 wouldn't have been off prior years.
So the 40 are costing us $17,000 a year.
Roughly. And again, that's under the numbers as they are today. We don't know what they'll be in a month from now. We may hire a bunch of people. We may have an event that they bring in special events for. Those people need to be able to log into our systems. So the numbers are there. We pad the numbers a little bit just so we have the ability to quickly
That's what
respond.
I was looking to hear.
Yeah.
We pad the numbers.
Sure, because we have times when we need them.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Dorito.
Director Montgomery, thank you. I'm a little bit confused listening to my colleague and what Tom just said. It sounds like the licenses include all these other licenses for Windows Desktop, 365, SQL Server, and then you mentioned 92 board members, right?
Yes.
What are we paying for, I guess, G3 licenses for 92 board members who really don't need access to all those?
They are G1 licenses. So they're
They
just
are.
a mailbox and SharePoint. That's correct.
So the 92 in here is a G1 included in that price?
Yes.
So how much is that of it?
I don't
Just
have a calculator in
rough.
front of me. It's $93.60 per year per user. So
Huh? Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
Okay. And the rest is for city employees,
The
professionals?
rest would be employees, volunteers, seasonal people, part-time.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Thanks, sir.
Thank you, council.
Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, if anyone would like to come forward and speak on the Microsoft Enterprise Agreement, software services, now's your chance. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the purchase approval for Microsoft Enterprise Agreement for Software Services with Dell Marketing LP. Consideration of approval for the procurement of the Microsoft Enterprise Agreement from Dell Marketing LP for 1 year, plus 2 renewable periods, and these are renewed annually in an amount not to exceed $301,450.18 using state contract number 9999 SPD 00000060-0005, and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
Yeah, it ended in 6, not 5.
Oh, 6, excuse me, I won't go through the whole number again, but the last digit was 6, excuse me.
We have a motion by Councilman Mitchell. Did I have a second? We have a second by Councilman Dorito. Any discussion? Councilman Will.
I apologize, but I cannot support padding expenditures with taxpayer dollars when they're not necessary. I cannot.
Councilman Mitchell.
I empathize with what he's saying, but I think to do what is being suggested and to accomplish all the additional folks throughout the year, you have to have an umbrella policy where you cover those for accounting purposes, because if you added a new person, each time you added a new person, for it to be that precise, you'd have to come back before council and get approval for that amount of expenditure again. So this has been the way we've done it forever, and they try and keep it as concise as they can. But accounting-wise, it would be a nightmare to do it otherwise.
Any other discussion? Councilman Dorito?
Listen, Councilman Will, I kind of agree with him. We do this every day in our firm. We have 6,000 employees worldwide, and we don't buy like extra licenses. We might buy, a handful, but we anticipate who we're hiring, what jobs are out there. We don't pad our accounts. We set up contracts where we can add licenses at the same price over a period of time. I personally agree with Mr. Will. Maybe we should at least look into that and table this item until we can see if that's a possibility. Now, I do also say, Director Montgomery, to you that under state contract, there might be limitations into doing that, and it might actually, as so-called padding the state contract this way, in the long run might be cheaper for us as a city, but I'd like to at least see if there's an alternative where we can, under the state contract, not have these licenses that we're paying for that are not being utilized. And it sounds like it's been like that for a number of years as far as the practice of the city.
Councilman Binder.
So we're concerned because how much of it's going into unallocated users? How much? It's not. 40 licenses are unallocated for how much? 17,000. Okay.
I'll take the 17,000 one and give it to someone.
So there are 45. Yes, 45 unallocated licenses that are part of the G3, and then there are 11 in the G1.
$45,000.
No, 45, number of licenses.
How much, what's the dollar amount?
Let's see. Our chicken scratch says 17,631 on the 45, and 1,029 on the 11 G1.
Okay.
Councilman Hypes.
There's a, Mr. Montgomery, there's a motion pending. I need a couple pieces of information. Are we under a time constraint on this motion?
Our current contract expires on August 31st.
And what are the...
It does take Microsoft about 10 days to process this, so that's why it's on tonight's agenda, not next week.
And if the contract isn't approved, what's Plan B?
The plan B is to beg for some grace period, which we've already had discussions around until we can come to an agreement. But beyond that, we have to come to some sort of agreement.
And what happens if you don't get the agreement?
At the end, essentially, the entire city goes back to working on paper.
Okay. And with lead time towards the contract next year, in advance of August 31st, 2024, are there opportunities to not have so many things sitting in unallocated licenses that are costing the city money? Can it be tightened up?
I'm sure we can do some of that.
It's a 3-year contract, so we're deciding what happens for the next 3 years?
It is a 3-year contract, that is correct.
So
the particular line item that we're discussing here, and understand if you go to the quote, there's 15 separate line items of things we're buying. We're not just buying Microsoft 365 licensing here. We have never removed licenses from that. And so I can't tell you what happens when we ask to do that.
I'm a little bit on the pragmatic side here. This is going to be an up and down vote, looks to me like.
Okay.
And so if it's up, you know, it's an unfortunate use of terminology to say padding as opposed to some other term, but that word has been thrown out there.
We plan.
And if it gets voted down, then we're hoping for something to work out.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Lagerbloom, would you like to address this process?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And let me just start by saying that when I heard the word pad, I knew that we were going to end up in this spiral because the hair on the back of my neck stood up. And that's not something that we do as we plan for the future with the finances of the city. I think we would have been more appropriate in talking about flexibility to be able to expand and contract as we need to. There's no intention to do any padding here. Knowing that this item had some questions and some concerns potentially as it was going forward, I allowed it to go forward because of this looming deadline, realizing that we were up against an August 31st deadline. I am not entirely comfortable with you all continuing to move forward with this item tonight until we can put some more work into getting that number of users to a pretty spot-on number and bringing this back forward to you on the 28th of next week. I believe that we will have all the ability in the world to convince them that an expiring agreement on the 31st of August can continue until such time as they can process an approved agreement. But because we're now in this place of a bit of nuance and a bit of terminology that I really don't, I don't think we want to be there, and I think we want to be ultra transparent with you that we're buying the number of licenses, that we have some legitimate reason that we could use. So hearing the discussion tonight, that's not how I would have approached the item. Coming into the meeting tonight, I would have thought that that we would have moved forward in a similar fashion that we had been moving forward in the past. This is a very healthy discussion. Appreciate it, and one obviously that we need to do some more work on before bringing it to you.
Do I take that to mean that you would welcome a
I would welcome a
to
motion to defer until August 28th.
Well, I'm just asking if that's what he's asking for, and
My-
if there are members of council that would like to make that motion.
My request would be...
We can't discuss it once there's been a motion to table.
So maybe I could just phrase it in a request. My request would be for Council Member Mitchell to withdraw his motion, that to be consented to by Council Member Dorito, and a substitute motion for deferral until August the 28th to be introduced.
I'd be happy to withdraw the motion for tonight until the 28th.
Councilman Dorito? Okay. Do we have a substitute motion?
I move to table this item until the August 28th meeting.
They generally prefer the term defer, so we don't have to advertise it.
Okay. I move to defer this item to the August 28th city council meeting.
I'll second that.
Have a motion by Councilman Dorito, a second by Councilman Mitchell. There's no discussion about motion to defer, so all those in favor, please vote yes, or otherwise vote no. And it does pass 6-1. Just as a matter of record, I don't know that we've had one for a motion to defer. Do we have discussion on a motion to defer? I know you don't with a motion to table. Or
It's okay.
just want to make sure I'm not getting in trouble with the attorneys. Thank you. So that motion, or that item will be back on the 28th agenda. So we'll move on to the next item, which is the Memorandum of Understanding with Alpharetta Old Milton County Historical Society. Mr. Drinkard, I believe you have this item.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, thank you. The item before you is Memorandum of Understanding with the Historical Society for the use and operation of the Mansell House and the log cabin. Effectively, the agreement with respect to the Mansell House, we've had an arrangement in place with the Historical Society since long before I got here 23 years ago. The agreement with respect to the log cabin came about when we acquired the log cabin in 2017. However, throughout this time, we haven't really had any form of written agreement. We haven't had anything that clearly defined some of the responsibilities and roles. So over the past year and a half, we've been working with the Historical Society to firm that up to everybody's benefit. And this was actually something that was requested by the Historical Society to clean things up so that everybody had a uniform understanding moving forward. The terms of the agreement have been reviewed by the Historical Society. It's my understanding that their board held a vote on that and have approved the agreement that's before you this evening, which of course was reviewed prior by our city attorney. Other than that, if you have questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
Any questions for Mr. Drinkard? Thank you, James.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate your work on this item. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, if anyone would like to come forward and speak on this item, now's your opportunity. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I ask council to approve as presented the memorandum of understanding between the city, do you need to read that? Memorandum of understanding? I ask that council approve the memorandum of understanding between the city of Alpharetta and the Alpharetta Old Milton Historical Society by providing for the use of the Mansell House associated grounds and the log cabin, defining the liabilities and responsibilities, and for other purposes.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Councilman Hypes, a second by Councilman Mitchell. Any discussion? Councilman Hypes?
First of all, kudos on the agreement. It's a very well-drafted agreement and formalizing this long-standing relationship, and it's a great natural progression of how close we've been as a city with the Historical Society and really moving us forward, you know, for the next 10 years, the next generation of folks who are working in the Historical Society with the city. It's just a little more modern to have an agreement between the two organizations and the great work that they're doing. And, you know, it comes at an opportune time. Councilman Mitchell, amongst others, has been very big advocate for the Historical Society and members of the community to preserve our history. And since I've been on council a little before, we've got a significant inventory of houses that private development is now renovating and restoring. And it's gone from a novelty to something that's got some momentum behind it, and it's really kind of exciting to see. Just, you know, just down Cumming Street, I think there's 5 houses right there, just, you know, lined up. So it's very exciting to see. It's been a lot of work by a lot of people who are my predecessors, and I'm glad to see this agreement get done.
Councilman Mitchell.
I would also echo what Councilman Hypes has said, and thank you all for the work you do, the volunteer work that you do and have done throughout the years to be conservators of our artifacts. And not all of them will fit in the museum, and so you've even come forward and offered to ensure the artifacts that are in storage in the basement of the log cabin. So thank you for making this more formal, and that way we can continue forward in a more proper way moving forward. And I noticed 5 or 6 members of the Historical Society here tonight, and it's always great to see you all, and thank you for what you do for our city.
Any other discussion? We have a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding with the Alpharetta Old Milton County Historical Society as outlined by Councilman Hypes and seconded by Councilman Mitchell. All those in favor, please vote yes, otherwise vote accordingly. And that one does pass unanimously. Thank you, everyone. So that'll wrap up the business portion of tonight's meeting. We'll move on to public comment. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, one last opportunity if you'd like to make a comment. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Reports. Do we have any reports this evening? And unfortunately, we still have one item that should be covered in executive session this evening, so I'll call for a motion and vote to recess to executive session.
Motion to recess to executive session.
Second. I have a motion by Councilman Wills, second by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel. All those in favor?
Topic, Mr. Mayor, just real quick, litigation.
Oh,
Thank you.
my apologies. Thank you for making that, noting the record. All those in favor vote yes, otherwise vote no. And it does pass unanimously. Thank you, everyone. So do we have a motion to reconvene? Have a motion by Councilman Will, second by Mayor Pro Tem Markle. All those in favor of reconvening back into our meeting, please vote yes, otherwise vote no. And it does pass unanimously. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Have a motion by Councilman Mitchell, a second by Councilman Dorito. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, please vote yes. And we are adjourned.
All right, the papers are coming your way, Councilman. Actually, you don't have anything there, you don't have anything there.